Congress must be prepared to help this infrastructure to ensure our economy remains competitive in the global marketplace. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes, the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Chairman. This amendment would exempt from procedural reforms any FCC actions with regard to broadband access in rural areas. Now, I know the gentleman talked about representing a large rural district. My district in eastern Oregon is larger than his state of New York. It is 70,000 square miles. In fact, it's bigger than any state this side of the Mississippi River, I'm told. And so this is my bill. I'm an advocate for it because in many respects it's bad process at the FCC that harms those least able to afford big high-rise towers of lawyers to come and oversee the FCC. That's why we need a more open and transparent process. This would exempt the FCC from using good process when reforming the Universal Service Fund, for example. And I know the gentleman's fairly new here, but you may not have caught the part about the FCC doing a data dump in the final hours before they promulgated their rule on Universal Service Fund, which meant it was very difficult, if not impossible, for anybody who really cared deeply about build-out of broadband or future USF to go through literally with thousands of pages. I used these earlier today in the debate on the underlying bill. We have binders and binders and binders of the actual documents that they dumped at the last minute. That's just not the way to do the public's business. So I understand what the gentleman's saying. There's Mr. Terry, who's the sponsor of this bill, is a longtime advocate of rural broadband build-out, as am I. That's part of what we're hoping to accomplish in other legislation as well that's become law. In the National Telecommunications Cooperatives Association, the voice of rural carriers, the very people you're trying to help and genuinely so with your amendment, actually support the underlying bill. Surely they don't think it will slow down rural broadband deployment. So I appreciate the gentleman's commitment to rural broadband build-out. I think his amendment actually goes the wrong direction and reduces transparency, accountability, access for the very people we're trying to help. And so therefore, Mr. Chairman, I oppose the amendment.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, may I reclaim my unused time?
No, gentleman's yield back. Is there objection? Gentleman seeks unanimous consent to reclaim the remaining part of his time. Is there objection? Seeing no objection?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Gentleman,
thank you.
Gentleman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
I just want to point out two items. First, this bill is not intended to influence in any way the debate concerning the FCC's reforms to the Universal Service Fund.
Could you say a little, Mr. Chairman, I'm having difficulty hearing the gentleman.
I'm sorry, is this mic not working?
Yeah, it is, but it's just hard to hear.
Okay. What I indicated was, in my remarks, I indicated that this amendment is not intended to influence the current debate at the FCC on the Universal Service Fund. So we're not attempting to in any way impact that. In addition, what we're really asking is that the FCC take into account in its rulemaking process rural broadband needs. We are not exempting it from the process, but simply asking that that be taken into account as they go through the process. There's no exemption intended here. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I request the yeas and nays.
Does the gentleman request a recorded vote?
Yes.
Okay. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report 112-422. For what purposes, gentleman from Texas?
I have an amendment at the desk, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report Number
112-422,
offered by Mr. Al Green of Texas.
Without objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 595, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Al Green, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief because I understand that time is of the essence. I've had an opportunity to work with my colleagues across the aisle. Our staffs have worked together. And, Mr. Chairman, this amendment would simply make it clear that the FCC will not be impeded in any way as it relates to notifying the public about dangerous conditions. We all know about the hurricanes that hit the Gulf Coast. We have tornadoes in other areas of the country. And this is a very simple, common-sense amendment. I believe my colleague will agree with me, and I don't believe there will be a need for a vote.
Would the gentleman yield?
I would yield.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank him for working with this side of the aisle. You have been terrific, and so have your staff as we've worked through. This wasn't a surprise amendment by any means. We were able to sit down and work through. We share your concern fully, and we are fully supportive of your amendment. And I thank you for raising this issue as a former radio broadcaster, having been involved in some emergencies, not hurricanes clearly in Oregon, but this is important, and so we do support it. And again, I thank you for working with us in the bipartisan spirit.
Thank you. And reclaiming my time, I want to be grateful to my colleague and to the staff members that worked with us. And with this said, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe there will be a request for a vote if the amendment is accepted.
Does the gentleman yield back?
I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition?
I do not.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 9, printed in House Report 112-422. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 112-422, offered by Ms. Speier of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 595, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Speier, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, who among us is not for competition and innovation? This amendment speaks directly to that issue, and I want to read you the amendment. This act shall not take effect until the Federal Communications Commission submits to Congress a report on the impact of this act on the mandate of the Commission to promote competition and innovation. Again, who isn't for competition and innovation? Among the important mandates of the FCC are the following: promoting competition, innovation, and investment in broadband services and facilities, supporting the nation's economy by ensuring an appropriate competitive framework for the unfolding of the communications revolution, encouraging the highest and best use of spectrum domestically and internationally, revising media regulations so that new technologies flourish alongside diversity and localism, providing leadership in strengthening the defense of the nation's communications infrastructure. The provisions of this bill could potentially disable the agency and stymie the Commission's ability to fulfill its most basic mission, to promote innovation while protecting the public interests. The U.S. has led the world in developing policies to unleash spectrum for mobile investment and innovation. The FCC was the first agency to develop spectrum auctions and also the first to free up so-called junk bands for unlicensed use such as Bluetooth, cordless phones, and Wi-Fi, all things we take for granted today. The economic benefit created by unlicensed spectrum alone is estimated at $37 billion a year. In 2011, the U.S. tech sector grew at 3 times faster than the overall economy. This is success, and we should do nothing to stymie that success. The U.S. has regained global leadership in mobile innovation. We are ahead of the world in deploying 4G mobile broadband, and those next-generation networks are projected to add more than $150 billion in GDP growth over the next 4 years. Internet startups attract $7 billion in venture capital last year, almost double the 2009 level. The apps economy alone has generated more than 500,000 jobs, and many of those are right smack dab in my district. You know them: Google, YouTube, and Facebook. Rest assured, the innovation is continuing. For example, Jelly Radio is a small technology company with about 15 employees, and it's located right across the street from my district office. It's already received $2 million in angel and venture capital. It allows crowdsourcing of radio playlists. You vote for what you want to hear, and the band or subject with the most votes gets played. They just received a local business award for Small Technology Company of the Year. Another is Storm 8. the creator of the #1 role-playing games on iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, and Android devices, and parent company of the #1 mobile social game developer, Team Lava. Started in 2009, Storm 8 quickly shot to the top of the mobile gaming industry, celebrating its first $1 million day in June of last year. These are examples of what we must protect in our FCC operation. We must ensure that innovators like these have the opportunity to grow and thrive. The FCC has a critical role to play in moving us forward technologically and with the jobs that it brings. Broadband has unlocked new opportunities to transform healthcare, education, energy, and public safety. Cloud computing is the next wave, a $68 billion global industry that is growing 17% annually. In fact, my son is now working for one of those companies. That's why we need to make sure that the FCC has the ability to make sure there continues to be innovation and competitiveness. The FCC Process Reform Act undermines standard administrative law practices, undoing over 60 years of federal court precedent under the Administrative Procedures Act, creating uncertainty, confusion for the FCC and innovative businesses that interact with the agency. It also severely undermines the FCC's ability to develop sensible conditions to protect consumers and ensure competition. I am a strong component of congressional oversight over agencies within our jurisdiction. That's part of our job. But we have to make sure that the FCC has the tools to do its job as well. So before we risk millions of jobs affected by the important work of the FCC, let's be sure we know how this bill will affect our innovative economy. I urge support of this amendment. I will indeed.
I'm just kind of curious, listening to your comments, if you actually support the current system where the FCC can go outside of its legislative jurisdiction and in effect force entities before it to, well, I guess
time's expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
I rise in opposition.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate bringing the amendment forward. I rise in opposition of it today because, in essence, what this does is implements a study on the idea of these reforms. These reforms, again, are very basic. This just says, hey, a lot of these are already in place. It opens up the process to the American public. We believe in an open, transparent government, an open and transparent system. This puts a study on the bill that simply has no timeline to it. Let me give you a quick example. The FCC is already behind on completing its reports. It didn't finish its satellite competition report for 2008 until 2011 and still hasn't finished the 2010 report on media ownership. So let's just be very honest with this. This is an attempt to kill this bill. This is an attempt to put a study on it that has no timeline and simply allows the FCC to indefinitely delay the reforms that I think, frankly, the American people are demanding of Congress, demanding of Washington, which is just open up government. Let us know what's going on. Be transparent. That's basic. That's what we stand for. And with that, I will yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The committee will rise informally.
The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House an enrolled bill.
H.R. 3606, an act to increase American job creation and economic growth by improving access to the public capital markets for emerging growth companies.
The committee will resume its sitting.
It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 10, printed in House Report 112-422. First is the gentlelady from California. Seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to offer an amendment that is actually Ms. Clarke's of New York that I'm offering on her behalf.
There's an amendment at the desk.
And I ask unanimous consent to
Will
offer
designate
the
the
revised version.
Amendment number 10, printed in House Report number 112-422, offered by Ms. Eshoo of California.
Does the gentlelady ask for unanimous consent to modify the amendment?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will report the modification.
Modification to Amendment number 10, offered by Ms. Eshoo of California. Page 22, after line 24, insert the following and redesignate the subsequent section accordingly. Section 4, Communications of First Responders. Nothing in subsection A of Section 13 of the Communications Act of 1934, as added by Section 2 of this Act, shall be construed to impede the Federal Communications Commission from acting in times of emergency to ensure the availability of efficient and effective communication systems for state and local first responders.
Is there objection to the modification? Without objection, the amendment is modified. Pursuant to House Resolution 595, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Eshoo, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any debating points on this amendment. We simply presented it on behalf of Ms. Clarke, and I hope that the majority will accept it. And with that, I will yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose is the gentleman from Oregon?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the work we've done with people involved in this, and we agree to it, and we accept the amendment as well. Now I yield back.
The question is on the amendment as modified, offered by the gentlewoman from California. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment as modified is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in House Report 112-422, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 1 by Mr. Crowley of New York. Amendment number 5 by Ms. Eshoo of California. Amendment number 7 by Mr. Owens of New York. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in the series. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on Amendment number 1, printed in House Report 112-422 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Crowley, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in House Report number 112-422, offered by Mr. Crowley of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is in order. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
Paul Barbagallo is a telecommunications reporter for Bloomberg BNA. Why are Republicans in the House pursuing a bill to overhaul the FCC?
Many Republicans in the House have been upset with how the FCC has conducted business as an independent federal agency. This dates back to the agency's consideration of net neutrality rules in 2010. Many Republicans, including Greg Walden and Fred Upton on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, have been displeased with how the FCC drafted those rules. Many believe that the agency was not as transparent as it could have been throughout that process, and they are seeking a legislative fix.
So what's the remedy they're proposing in this bill?
The most controversial provision in the bill would limit the concessions the FCC can require of companies seeking approval to merge. Under H.R. 3309, merger conditions must be, quote, narrowly tailored to remedy a harm that arises as a direct result of the specific transfer or transaction. And also the FCC would not be able to accept any voluntary commitments from merging companies that are outside the scope of its statutory authority. So, in other words, the FCC would really be hamstrung here in what they can do, what they can order merging companies to give up as a condition of their approval.
Has the FCC responded to some of these proposed changes?
They have testified before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. They have said that they have followed the Administrative Procedures Act, and they are also under the current chairman, Julius Janikowski. They have made efforts to be more transparent. They have eliminated outdated rules. They feel as though this legislation is unnecessary. However, the Republicans on the committee, well, the one Republican on the commission currently feels as though legislative action could help the agency be more open and transparent.
You talked about Republicans, specifically Representatives Walden and Upton, and their reasons for supporting the bill. How about Democrats? What are they saying in opposing the bill?
The Democrats are quite concerned, certainly on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and in the Senate. Obama has come out and opposed the bill. They feel as though many of the provisions would create a carve-out, a special exemption in the Administrative Procedures Act for the FCC, and it would severely limit the agency's ability to protect the public interest, to protect consumers by imposing conditions on mergers and transactions. They really feel that this would really cut the FCC's legs out.
What are the chances for the passage today in the House, and what's ahead in the Senate?
The bill is likely to pass the House, but most likely will be dead on arrival in the Senate. There is a companion in the Senate. Freshman Senate Commerce Committee member Dean Heller has a companion bill. But so far no Democrats have signed on to that bill, and sources on the Senate side have said that Senator Rockefeller, chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, has no intention of bringing the bill up anytime this year. So we're looking at passage in the House, but likely will be dead in the Senate.
An update on the FCC bill from Paul Barbagallo, who writes for Bloomberg BNA, a telecommunications reporter. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And now the Supreme Court today heard arguments on what has been described as the individual mandate. So everyone's clear, I just want to read a passage from the summary of the Senate's health care law that lays out the mandate. Quote, requires each citizen or lawful permanent resident to be covered under a qualified health plan or equivalent health care program. In other words, each citizen is mandated to have health insurance. Now, I just want to make one clarification. This is indeed from the Senate health care law, but it's not from the Affordable Care Act. It's an excerpt from the Senate Republicans' health care proposal from 1993. The concept of an individual mandate was first floated by the conservative Heritage Foundation. It was taken up by conservative Republicans as an alternative to the universal health bill proposed by President Clinton. Senators Grassley, Hatch, and Lugar were co-sponsors, as was then Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole. And countless other Republicans have endorsed the mandate in recent years. In 2009, Senator Grassley did. In 2007, Senator DeMint did. Senators Graham, Alexander, and Corker have all endorsed an individual mandate. They were co-sponsors of the Wyden-Bennett Healthy Americans Act that included an individual mandate. So what we're seeing now is baffling. Republicans have gone from being the main champion of the individual mandate to being its main antagonist, and you have to ask why. The Republicans were fathers of the individual mandate. Now suddenly they want to give it up for adoption on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. The flip-flop on the individual mandate is the prime example of their willingness to oppose anything this president proposes simply because he proposed it, because it was their idea. And of course, there is the issue of Mitt Romney, who passed Romney Care in Massachusetts, which is based on exactly the same model health care law we passed 2 years ago. There's no question that the health care law Mitt Romney passed as governor of Massachusetts is the same one that President Obama passed at the federal level. 4 years ago, Mitt Romney even called the law he signed in Massachusetts a model for the rest of the country. He wrote an op-ed in USA Today in July 2009, while the health care debate was raging, calling on the president to follow the example he set with his law in Massachusetts. And then the president, when he proposed his plan, said he was basing it on Mitt Romney's idea in Massachusetts. Now that the mandate's unpopular with conservatives, Romney's trying to disown what he did in Massachusetts. Well, Mitt can run, but he can't hide. No matter what he tries to say now, Mitt Romney is a walking, talking amicus brief in favor of the president's health care law. If he tries to make it an issue in a debate with President Obama, it's just going to confirm that he's the Etch-a-Sketch candidate. He should just admit it was planned all along. If Mitt Romney is the nominee, in effect, health care will be off the table as an issue. And with that, I am going to call on the chairman of our Judiciary Committee, who was in the proceeding, Senator Leahy.
I found the proceeding interesting. It's interesting, too, the final argument, the last 2 minutes of the argument, is the Solicitor General saying that this would work well, just as it does in Massachusetts, to cover everybody. That did bring a little bit of a murmur in the courtroom. But as you listen to the argument on the question of constitutionality today, it's very obvious that if this law is unconstitutional, then tomorrow somebody could come in and attack Social Security for the same reason. That would be unconstitutional. Or people like myself who buy insurance but also have to pay Medicare, we could say, well, Medicare is unconstitutional because why should I have to pay for that when I'm also paying for private insurance? You can go through all of these examples. If this is unconstitutional, the argument can be made all the rest of them are unconstitutional. I don't think that's what the American public wants. I'm not sure that that is the kind of issue the Supreme Court want to unleash on Americans.
Senator Harkin, who's chairman of the Health Committee, who was instrumental in writing a good part of this law.
Well, it's clear after spending 2 hours in the Supreme Court listening to the arguments that the opponents of the Health Reform Act, the Affordable Care Act, are basing their arguments on politics rather than precedents, on politics rather than what is best for the American people. Senator Leahy's right. Every time that we and the Congress have tried to fulfill our obligation under the Constitution to promote the general welfare, there have been those who have tried to undercut it by going to the Supreme Court. They tried to undercut Social Security. They tried to undercut the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, you name it. There's always been a group out there to try to undercut what we in Congress have done to promote the general welfare. The Affordable Care Act, I think the arguments that I heard in the Supreme Court this morning are very clear. Congress does have the power to regulate commerce. Every person in this country, virtually every person in this country, will at some point in his or her life use health care. They will be in the commerce of the health care delivery system. The other side, those opponents say, well, but Congress could tell you to pay for it when you get it, but they can't tell you that you have to have insurance to cover you beforehand. Talk about splitting hairs. That's where it now falls into the political realm. I am convinced after listening to the 2 hours this morning that this court can go no other way but to uphold the individual mandate that the Congress has put into the Affordable Care Act.
Senator Reid.
Well, everyone, as Senator Harkin pointed out, uses health care. The question is whether everyone will be required to pay their fair share for health care in a way that benefits everyone, and that's at the heart of this case before the United States Supreme Court. We already have a mandate in this country, and the mandate says that if you're sick, you'll be treated, usually in emergency rooms. But that mandate exists. The question is, again, who will pay for that care, which is provided for by the public policy and the laws of the United States. And as my colleague, Senator Schumer, pointed out, this idea originated with Republicans who are today trying to vociferously deny its legitimacy. In '89, the Heritage Foundation suggested every household should be required, mandated, to have health care insurance. In 1993, my former colleague John Chafee, who I see as someone who not only understood the health care system, but also respected the Constitution, in fact, defended it as a Marine on Guadalcanal in Korea, his bill included an individual mandate, and it was sponsored by many, including Senator Robert Dole. The same year, former Speaker Newt Gingrich went on Meet the Press, and he said he was for the federal government requiring individuals to buy health care. I guess times have changed. This is basically the same model that's the Affordable Care Act. And as, again, my colleagues have pointed out, Governor Romney of Massachusetts deserves credit for passing the bill, but also indicated that, in his view, he, and I think he spoke at that point on behalf of Republicans, quote, don't think the free market ever envisioned an idea that people would be able to do something and make other people pay for it. And that's the present American health care system. This is a national commodity. 17% of our economy is devoted to health care costs. So the idea that this isn't interstate commerce, the idea that this is an option that we're compelling people to participate in, I don't think stands the test of common sense and common reason. So today, I hope the court listened well, and I hope that Senator Harkin's right, that based upon the arguments, they will uphold this Affordable Care Act, and so that we can get on with providing better, more efficient care for all of our citizens, and also doing it in a way that won't bankrupt our government.
Are there any questions for any one of us?
Senator Leahy, you were in the court. Most prognosticators think that this is all going to come down to Justice Kennedy. Can you describe his reaction in the court and whether he was receptive to certain arguments on one side or the other?
Well, I never try to speculate just looking at the justices on the questions they ask. It was interesting, some of the things that were said. It was Justice Breyer referenced one case where if Justice Scalia was consistent with the way he ruled in that case, as the marijuana case, he'd have to uphold the health care legislation. I found more interest in that kind of going back and forth. And the court, today we're arguing the constitutionality. I think it's a clear-cut case. I think you have to really stretch to say this was unconstitutional, but Social Security, for example, or Medicare is constitutional. If you say this is unconstitutional, then you've got to say Social Security and Medicare are also unconstitutional. I'm not sure the court's prepared to do that.
Senator, what is the role of the Senate and you guys in this right now? Obviously, it's in the court's hands. Why even talk about it? Why argue about it?
Well, we passed the law, and I think we have a real interest in seeing what they do. I want to hear what the arguments are. I'm a member of the Supreme Court bar. I wanted to hear it in that capacity, and as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, just how they react. I picked this particular one, the argument over the constitutionality, because it affects just about everything else we do in the Judiciary Committee and others. I wanted to hear how they react to it.
Senators, the President has been pretty silent about this law over the last couple of weeks. I'm wondering if you're satisfied, or should the President be doing more to defend it?
I think the President would probably felt if he was on the demilitarized zone and between the two Koreas might not be the best place to talk about health care. I think he stuck to the things that he was doing on his trip abroad. He's spoken about this over and over again. I don't think the President wants to see himself in a position of trying to tell the court what to do. There is separation of powers, but I think that the President spoke on this many, many times. He's going to be in Vermont on Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks about it again.
Senator, we'll be hearing more from your end of things from the Senators. We've even seen the House Republicans and Senate Republicans come out several times yesterday and several times today. So will we hear more from Democrats later this week?
Well, I'd be interested. I don't see anybody in the House Republicans, other than the rhetoric, introducing legislation to wipe out this health care. I don't think they want to go to parents and say, we're going to wipe out your ability to have your children on your policy while they're at college. I don't think they want to go and say, we're going to wipe this out so tough if you've got a pre-existing condition, you're not going to be able to get health care, and on and on. They'd rather talk about it, but not go against it. As I said, the last minute of the argument, as they said, just as we proved in Massachusetts, where you have to insure everybody, that's the only way it works.
Senator Schumer, you said that Crowley's the nominee, that health care will be off the table as an issue. Does that mean you don't expect it to be a good issue for Democrats to run on in 12?
No, not at all. I just am saying that Senator Romney was, I'm just saying that Governor Romney was so much involved in creating just about this exact law that his attacking it now is going to have virtually no credibility. And so I believe if Governor Romney is the nominee, this issue will be effectively taken off the table. When he brings it up, I suppose a lot of people will just hold up Etch-a-Sketches.
Are any of you surprised at the force and persistence of the negative sentiment, or did you pretty much expect that 2 years ago?
Well, I don't know. Look, one of the more prominent Republicans in the Senate said at the time when we were passing the health care reform bill that they had to defeat it and make this Obama's Waterloo. The minority leader of the Senate, Senator McConnell, actually said that he wanted his #1 priority was to make Obama a one-term president. So that's why I say this has all gotten caught up into the politics of the moment. I think what we have to keep in mind is if they are successful, if the Republicans are successful in repealing this, think about the millions of Americans already, many millions of Americans whose young people are on their parents' policies until they're age 26. They'll take that away from them. Think about all the young people today who are covered with insurance even though they had a pre-existing condition. The Republicans want to take that away from the American people. Think about all the elderly who are now getting benefits from closing the donut hole. And they're getting rebates. I think the average in Iowa last year, they saved $600. Every senior in Iowa. They're going to take that away from the American people. Elderly people now getting prostate cancer screening, colonoscopies, mammogram screening without any co-pays, any deductibles. Millions of elderly Americans are already taking advantage of that. The Republicans want to take that all away from them. That's what's at stake right now, is whether or not we're going to let the Republicans take away from the American people all of these hard-earned, hard-won gains in their own health care system.
Well, Senator, that begs this question. The Republicans seem to have a strategy should the court rule against the individual mandate. Are you talking a strategy? Repeal is what Senator Harkin said.
They want to repeal it.
Right. They may not be successful, obviously, but they have a strategy.
They want to repeal it regardless of what the Supreme Court does.
But they're ready to pounce.
That's right.
And use the momentum. Do you have a post-court strategy? Are you discussing something, what you'll do if, in fact, the court rules against your wishes?
I expect the court will uphold it.
Right.
And our strategy, of course, was to pass the bill in the first place. And if they don't uphold it, then we'll see where I suspect will be a major issue in the elections, congressional and presidential, this fall. You're not going to see a year, if they come down in June or July or whatever, you're not going to see then the ability to do the whole year's debate in the Congress. The debate will be with the American people this fall.
But are you discussing are you discussing how to give people these protections come July 1st?
That's right. That's why I say, maybe I'm just one person saying this, but the more the Republicans and the candidates they have for president are out there talking about repealing our health care bill, I say give them more rope. Maybe I should buy their ads for them. Let them go out and talk about it, because the American people now are seeing the benefits of this health care bill that we passed, and they don't want it taken away from them. So I say the Republicans make our day. Go out there and continue to campaign against this health care bill, and I'll tell you, the American people will answer you this November.
Sorry to Thank you. Try one more time. Are you discussing a strategy should the court not rule your way?
Well, I agree with Pat Leahy. The court is going to uphold. I believe the court will uphold this. The precedence is there. The legality is there. I don't believe the court is going to pay attention to this political theater.
There's a lot more to the strategy than saying repeal, repeal, repeal. That's easy to say, but it's easy for them to say, but I don't see a single one of these people say repeal, 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 go on the floor and say, let's do it piecemeal. Let's do away with having your college-age kid on your insurance policy. Let's do away with this pre-existing. I mean, repeal is a bumper sticker. It is not a policy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Tom. Hey, Corey, what do you do there in the morning?
Mr. Johnson of Georgia. Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 196, the nays are 219, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 5, printed in House Report 112-422 by the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Eshoo, on which further proceedings were postponed and in which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 112-422, offered by Ms. Eshoo of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. This vote, the yeas are 179, the nays are 238, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 7, Printed in House Report 112-422 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Owens, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in House Report number 112-422, offered by Mr. Owens of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. vote. The yeas are 194, the nays are 222. The amendment is not adopted. The question is on the committee amendment in the nature of the substitute as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 3309, and pursuant to House Resolution 595, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 3309, and pursuant to the House Resolution 595, reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on the adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amendment. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment and the third reading of the bill. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend the Communications Act of 1934 to provide for greater transparency and efficiency in procedures followed by the Federal Commission's communications.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
In its current form, I do.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Perlmutter of Colorado moves to recommit the bill H.R. 3309 to the Committee on Energy and Commerce with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Page 23, after line 5, insert the following. Section 5. Protecting the passwords of online users. Nothing in this Act or any amendment made by this Act shall be construed to limit or restrict the ability of the Federal Communications Commission to adopt a rule or to amend an existing rule to protect online privacy, including requirements in such rule that prohibit licensees or regulated entities from mandating that job applicants or employees disclose confidential passwords to social networking websites.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The House will be in order. Members will please take their conversations off the floor. The gentleman deserves to be heard.